So excellence in science is critical, as we learned, but being a former scientist myself, I learned science is one thing, but really selling other people on the idea of science is equally important to drive an impact. That does require communication skills. It also requires navigating sometimes fairly complex organizations, be it academics or be it in the private industry. And with this, I want to bring you Robin Weers to talk about think politics is a dirty word. When getting ahead, think again. And Robin Weers has more than 25 years experiences. She worked at the intersection of organizational psychology, digital design and research, diversity, equity, and inclusion to catalyze transformation for organizations. She has a master's in African American Studies and worked at many large companies such as Wells Fargo and Workday. Now she's running her own organization. Robin, we're so glad to have you here today, and I will hand it over to you.
Thank you for that introduction. I'll also just mention for completeness, I have a PhD in organizational psychology as well, as a master's in African American Studies. And as an organizational psychologist, I'm very interested in how people navigate organizations and how we can make the organizations that we work in more pleasant to be in. My tagline is business is human. And when you get humans in a place, you get politics. And so I'll be speaking to you about organizational politics. And why is this shark here on the screen? I think I chose this image because when I think of organizational politics, I think of, sharks in the water and trying to avoid, sharks who might be trying to sabotage me in the organization. But I want to bring you a different lens on organizational politics today. I think most of us think about politics, sorry, just getting my slides to advance, in negative terms, right? Where, there might be backstabbing or people trying to steal our ideas, concealing their agendas, playing favorites or blacklisting people. So, for years I thought, well, I don't want to be a political person. I don't want to play organizational politics. I don't want to be perceived as political. And then I started to learn that there is such a thing as being under political in organizations. And I think this is primarily true for people who are scientists, whether they be in the hard sciences like yourselves, or even in the social sciences like myself, where we, are researchers and we tend to think that that our work will speak for itself. We'll get into why that's not true in a moment, but let me first define for you what we even mean by organizational politics. So the definition from this book, Survival of the Savvy, is that organizational politics are informal, unofficial, and sometimes behind the scenes efforts to sell ideas, influence an organization, increase power, or achieve other targeted objectives. So it's really a lot about communication and influence. And so the notion I'd like to introduce to you today is that there is such a thing as high integrity politics. So what does it mean to have high integrity politics? It means that you're actually developing skills that we call organizational savvy. Isn't that a lot nicer than talking about politics? I think so. I think we all want to be more savvy. So, organizational savvy refers to a person's ability to navigate and succeed within an organization by understanding its culture, politics, and dynamics. And it involves employing skills such as interpersonal communication, emotional intelligence, networking, and political awareness. That doesn't sound anything like having a hidden agenda or backstabbing or favoritism. sounds like skills all of us could work to develop. So I want you to look at these two lists here. There's one list on the left side of the screen in blue and one in green, and just kind of scan this list for a moment and then decide, personally, which side do you resonate with more? Are you more on the side of, I love ideas and I focus more on my ideas and the results. I have an open, honest, upfront agenda. I believe, and trust in others' good intentions. I think good work will be rewarded. And I just kind of want to keep my head down and do the job that I'm here to do. So that's kind of one side. On the other side, the orientation is having great street smarts, being interested in noticing who has power, excelling, being really good at presenting and packaging information, having, like a really positive attitude, like, yeah, we can do that, and a can-do spirit. Compromising, sort of, give and take, being flexible as needed to get the job done, being a little bit more verbally disciplined or not sharing as much information all at once, liking loyalty and creating alliances in organization, and really being great at selling ideas. So just think about which side you resonate with more. I know for me, within Wells Fargo, so here's the two lists again. I ran research teams of data scientists, qualitative and market researchers, and we were way heavily on the left-hand side, power of ideas. We thought our work, was high quality. We felt really good about our integrity, and our ideas would speak for themselves. And so we had a really kind of low score over here in terms of this style, which is called power of the person. And really the main difference between these two styles is how they think about power. Power of ideas people think about, the content. The power lies in the content, and you will get, rewarded with good work. Power of the person thinks more about, okay, who do I have to create alliances with? Who do I have to connect with, influence, have a good relationship with? And that's where they think of the center of power. So these are not binary, you're either a power of ideas person or a power of the person person. These ideas about organizational savvy and politics exist on a continuum. So you've got, less political style is the power of ideas, and the more political is the power of the person. So think about where you might locate yourself on this continuum. And as you get into the, extreme edges of both style, I think about, how any strength that we might, possess in our lives, when we overdo that strength, it can become a liability and even a fatal flaw. So I saw this on my team where we had a preponderance um, of the ideas political style type. And a lot of times the data scientists and researchers on my team would complain that their work did not get utilized as much as they hoped. And they had built all these data dashboards, and they wanted people to go there and query these dashboards, ask questions, and so forth. And then the complaints we would get from our partners was, you're too hard to work with. We don't, understand the material. We don't even know what questions to ask. And my team members would say, well, it's all right there. I mean, the work is there. We did the work. Like, it should be speaking for itself. So that's what happens when the idea styles get pushed too far. And it can have real career consequences where, if you think that relationships are not as important as the content of your work, it can result in having, an insufficient network or too low of a profile where you are not getting the credit that you deserve. And there's also a tendency for people within this style to be a little bit, too blunt with the truth, and not working on packaging or smoothing things over when presenting information. And I've definitely been guilty of that myself, and I've sort of taught myself to say, when people ask questions or challenge me, say, that's a really interesting idea. Let me think about that for a minute, and just give myself that pause. And people on this side can also kind of have a little bit of a holier than thou demeanor, like, I do the right thing, and, other people, are squishy with their integrity or their ethics. And, in the classic kind of geek style, folks who tend towards the ideas style can be a little bit clueless, is maybe too strong a word, but not pay enough attention to their reputation or image. And we all know how important executive presence is when we want to make a good impression. People who take the power of the person idea, the more political side, too far, might get into traps of power trips. They might even compromise their ethics, or be perceived as too ambitious, willing to, do anything to get ahead. People might start to, wonder if they're trustworthy, or they could be, not as nice to their coworkers or too abrasive in the name of getting ahead. They might also, cut corners, threaten quality with all their compromising that I mentioned earlier, which could, ultimately have some really negative consequences for the companies that they work with, including lawsuits or loss of market share. So don't get too scared. This is when either style is pushed to extreme. And what I want to suggest is that there's this middle ground that, even if you tend towards the under political side, as I do, or you're more of a, over political person of like, hey, let's shake hands, let's schmooze. You can combine aspects from both of these styles and come up with a style that feels authentic to you, that is within what we call the politically savvy zone. And this is where you can have a lot of impact with also keeping your integrity intact. So, how do you know if you're in the savvy zone? So, a rose by any other name. You can ask yourself two simple questions. Are the objectives that I'm pursuing good for the organization as a whole, or just for me as an individual? Or you can even turn this question in your mind to somebody that you're working with. Is this person trying to do what's good for the organization, or are they just trying to get ahead for themselves? And do the efforts that the person, either yourself or a colleague, are making to achieve that objective, do they have an underlying integrity? And if you can answer those questions in the affirmative, you're probably, have a good chance of staying within this politically savvy zone. other kind of tips here is, definitely have a sense of what your values are and stay true to those values. It's also important when we go into organizations, whether those are for-profit, nonprofit, higher ed, industry, that we become astute at assessing the culture of that organization. And you can pick this up through, understanding what are the unwritten rules that people are operating under, how do people treat each other, what types of behavior is rewarded, what types of behavior is not rewarded, and understanding then how that leads to a trend towards various political styles of your colleagues. You can also practice ethical lobbying and balanced self-promotion. I think a lot of us who are on this less political side and we kind of just want our work results to speak for themselves, we think that, there's something unattractive or unseemly about selling our ideas or, talking about our achievements. But there are definitely ways of doing that where we can still hold on to our ethical core. And I think for me, one way that I do that is thinking about how I'm communicating as service. What is the way in which I am being of service by passing on the information that I have or presenting the work that I have done. It's always a good idea to cultivate your network, and especially within organizations where you do have to influence your colleagues in certain directions, or you want them to act on your results or change behavior of the organization. It's good to, have people who like you and people that you like, and to know who's friendly to your ideas and who might need a little bit more convincing. And in order to convince effectively, we all need to develop our savvy communication skills. So learning to combine all of these modalities of communication. Humans, learn through stories. We remember stories. Stories affect us emotionally. A lot of people need to see the facts and want to understand the numbers and the, statistical significance and so forth. So that needs to be represented as well. But we also need to become adept, and this aligns more with the stories aspect of painting a vision of the future. What is the future that we want to see? And what are the opportunities that we have in order to attain this very attractive future? And if you manage people, you'll want to attend to these qualities of the politically savvy zone, not just for yourself, but also for your team. And, this involves scanning the organization and really proactively asking for feedback about, how do you think this work is perceived in this organization? Was this useful to you? What would you change? How easy or difficult is it for you to work with my team? You will learn a lot when you ask your partners those types of questions. So I believe that's the end of my presentation. And I wish you all the best in your future endeavors and invite you to go forth and be savvy. And I'm Robin Beers of Ubuntu Culture Company. Thank you.